So these are various details that are going to get looked at. Like, you collected votes in a way you weren't legally able to, and you just tried to go around the process when you were told, no, you can't do it that way.
And what's
sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
more alarming, some media outlets publish things simply aren't true without checking facts first.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Hey everyone, Dave here, December 1773. As always, me and Ryan on the weekly show. What is not normal, we have Kevin on for the second time here. And the reason Kevin's coming on is because he is all in on election fraud. I don't want to take his put a position to him, but I'm sure he'll explain everything a little bit better. But we're going to kind of do a bit of a normal show here, and we're going to get with Kevin, and he's going to go through what he expects is happening and what he thinks might happen going forward here. The reason we wanted to have him on is because me and Ryan are we're a little bit on the position that there very, 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 very likely was voter fraud. I just don't know if it was enough to overturn an election, and that's why I want to have Kevin on, because he's on a different end of that. He definitely. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it fair to say that you think it's definitely enough voter fraud to change an election?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I think it's something that we have to look at. Like, given the severity of some of the allegations in the affidavits, it's worth considering. Like, one of the affidavits that Lynn Wood filed, I mean, the guy from Dominion was saying that, like, you could basically just run blank ballots through the machine, and it would go in the same folder as write-ins, and then you could just move all those write-ins, be it like 300,000 or whatever. These are now Biden votes. Override at the end. And like, to where, like, there was people that said there were boxes of ballots that were like already printed with the bubble filled in for Biden, and like no other information filled out that they saw people running. And there's a lot of things that like are like beyond the scope of like fraud that you would typically see that I think happened, to where like I think it's worth looking at, but I have no idea where looking at it would go. But sure. I mean, I think there's been fraud in several elections for like the last decades. I mean, like, in the 2000 election, you had in Volusia County, Florida, there were votes for Al Gore that were counted negatively. Like, I think it was somewhere like 16,022 or something like that. So, like, this is like a bipartisan thing where it happens on both sides. So I feel like no matter how somebody feels politically, you should be worried about whether or not there's people canceling out your vote through these various means.
Sure. And Ryan, was your position correctly stated, Ryan? You kind of aligned with me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, and especially nowadays when everything is so mainstream as far as like these talking points, that I keep seeing the term Orwellian getting thrown around a lot in the media. It's kind of getting me a little pissed off, because it's a term I've been using for years and years, and I'm not a prophet, but it's now like a mainstream label. But with all that being said, yeah, I think anything's possible, but I don't necessarily think. I probably chopped out. I don't necessarily think that they swayed an election per se.
Yeah.
But if they are, I mean, maybe add to Kevin's point a little bit quick. I know we're going to get into this more, but in part, if they were starting to do it in 2000, maybe they just got that much better at it. So,
well, yeah.
But that's why we have Kevin on. I mean, Kevin, you've been going. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
The mail-in ballot thing only exacerbated the chances for that, because a lot of the observers were told, due to COVID regulations, we can only have so many people in here. And I mean, typically in an election, what you'd be able to do is, let's say you and Dave are election observers. One of you is a Democrat, one of you is a Republican. Say this is a ballot here. I hold it up. Like, both of you are supposed to have an opportunity to go, all right, well, that looks legitimate. Let's say Ryan's a Democrat and he thinks the vote's okay, but David's a Republican. He goes, wait a minute, there's no signature on that, or whatever the problem may be. Then you get to throw it aside and say, well, that vote doesn't count. We didn't have an opportunity to do that. And under pretty much every state law, those votes can't be counted because of that, because there's no way to check once they're opened out of the envelopes. The whole secrecy envelope is you're supposed to signature match with those two things, and that opportunity wasn't given for hundreds of thousands of votes. It's like, I mean, John took notes from the press conference of the lawyers the other day, and they said I think in Pennsylvania it's somewhere over 600,000 votes like that. I don't remember the exact number, but I mean that's the thing. Like I said, that's not. This is the first election and that I can think of where like that process wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of things that raise red flags, but it's also there's Supreme Court precedent from 1878, United States versus Throckmorton, where the gist of the ruling was that fraud vitiates everything. So like basically, if he's able to prove, let's say they cheated him out of just one of the states, then they're only able to prove that one. The Supreme Court precedent is to look at Joe Biden as somebody who would have violated a contract. That we can't take the results as they've come in as likely to be legitimate. If you did this one place, you probably did it other places. I mean, like it's just you basically are viewed then as like not fit for the office. Like at that point, like if you were to do things you weren't allowed to do in the election rules. Usually, this isn't. People don't call anybody on this. I think that's where like you have a lot of the issues that like elections probably have been rigged in the past. And nobody notices or nobody says anything. Like Sidney Powell the other day when she was on TV said they had evidence that the voting machines were rigged in the Democrat primary in 2016 so that Hillary would win the state instead of Bernie Sanders. And the person who gave this affidavit spoke to Bernie and said, hey, there's evidence they cheated you out of this. You should probably say something. And he just went along with it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin. Yeah, I think we should run headlines, Dave. But I want to touch back to that because it's a perfect lightning rod that voter fraud is completely highly plausible because they cheated Bernie twice and everybody knows it. Even the people that voted for Bernie the second time knew he got burned the first time, not mentioned the second time. So we can like break that down a little more after headlines because it's such an easy thing to just kind of swarm over it. So but yeah, Dave, run it. But yeah, Kev, it's a great point, man. That is a good point.
Kevin is not a regular on the show, so he's not used to the headline segment. It is my personal favorite. It's my favorites of the segments.
It's our only segment.
It's our only segment. I got
favorite, oldie but a good, the only but a goodie.
I got three here. I think I want to end with this one, so I'm going to start here. I don't know if anyone saw this gem here, but this is where we are. Headlines. University of Wisconsin declares large rock to be racist. Votes to remove. Yes.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yes.
What color
It is
rock?
It's a literal rock.
What
I'm
color's
guessing
the rock, Dave?
Probably some kind of gray.
What color's the rock, Dave?
It's ironically gray, which is a mixture of black and white.
Man, people have too much time on their hands. Like they got to invent problems like that.
Is it like an artistic rock, or is this like?
No, it's like there's a plaque
like a huge
on the rock, and the guy it's like dedicated to he's racist, of course. I don't know if he's actually racist.
Oh man,
racist rocks. You gotta watch out
I don't
for
know
him.
what's worse. I don't know what's worse. That the guy who's the monument is dedicated to is found to be racist, or that the guy got a rock as his monument.
Yeah, it's like
a shitty monument.
It's like the Peanuts Halloween thing. He didn't get a statue. Like, well, I got a statue. I got a statue too. What'd you get? I got a rock.
Hey, speaking of Peanuts, just like the Peanuts Christmas tree, the New York City Christmas tree looks fantastic this time of year.
Does it? Does it have a mask?
I have no idea if you've seen a picture. Maybe you can cut an image on this podcast. It looks empty.
Oh.
Yeah, it's non-decorated.
It looks like the tree had COVID.
Yeah.
Probably did.
The COVID Christmas tree.
I wouldn't be shocked.
For Rockefeller Center, which is like a renowned place with the ice ring in front, this big, huge tree with beautiful setting and like textbook New York, and the tree looks like it's got COVID, bro.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Well, probably because it's too early to decorate still.
Fantastic.
Speaking of
decorate, Dave. There's no
anyway.
There's no tree there. There's no leaves.
Well, you do what you got to do. Speaking of Christmas coming early, I'm sure everyone saw this one. Well, actually, this was before the other news, so I guess we'll do double headlines here. Headlines! Kenosha shooter Kyle Rittenhouse illegally bought gun with coronavirus stimulus check.
No.
But I guess we can cut that to another headline, which is he got bailed out.
Yeah, in large part due to the My Pillow guy, I believe.
My Pillow guy coming through in the clutch.
The guy was an ex-crackhead.
I mean, anybody, hey, he turned his life around. This is America. Everybody should have the opportunity to do that. So,
heck yeah, dude.
But that's okay.
What a pro-American story. Ex-crackhead guy becomes a wealthy guy, helping out a quote-unquote right-wing extremist militia member.
I'm sure he was an ex-crackhead, but no, he's probably packing up, moving to Oregon. Hitting the old Oregon Trail.
Kyle Rittenhouse, we said since the beginning that we would wait for all the facts to come out. Sounds like they're going to be pushing forward with that rather soon if he's already posted bail. If I'm not mistaken, Kyle Rittenhouse was 2 months ago, so it's now in people's far distant memory because we have goldfish brains politically.
Yeah, I think his trial was set to kick off sometime next year, mid next year, maybe. Maybe it's earlier than that.
It was pushed back fairly far as I know. I don't think they put any priority on it.
Do you think they pushed it back for COVID?
$2 million bond.
Probably.
$2 million bail.
Yeah, I thought that was
anything at all really right now. Like the election stuff's expedited, but other than that, we really aren't doing much.
But I think back to the original headline. I don't know. The stimulus check seemed to work out for him.
Yeah, the gun show loophole, right? That was a gun show loophole.
I guess he bought it from his friend.
It's a gun show loophole, David. We need more gun control. We cannot have right-wing militia extremist members take government-sponsored money and buy high-capacity murdering devices and have them loose on our streets, David. We need to monitor all transactions with
all private transactions.
All private government
must be monitored. That's why they need to get rid of cash, and everything will be done through PayPal.
Hey, it's the new normal. Just get over it.
It's the new normal.
For the record, I wasn't gonna polish my ego on the channel today, but I will. Back in October, I said that 2020 should be, or we should refer to it as the Great Reset. And last week, Justin Trudeau came out with his whole Great Reset thing, and it has now spun into an internet conspiracy, apparently, the mainstream media. But, we were supposed to be flattening the curve, and now we're waiting for a vaccine, and now we're told the vaccine's not good enough. Which brings me to something I want to talk about, the piece of shit governor of New York State.
Ooh. Yeah.
That scumbag's supposed to be getting an Emmy.
Yeah, that was my last one.
For the way he talked during a press conference to the American people.
No.
Yes.
Let me read the exact thing.
Oh, how off was I, David?
You were very off. Headlines. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York will receive the International Emmy Founders Award in recognition of his leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic and his masterful use of TV to inform and calm people around the world.
Well, I mean, I guess it makes sense he's getting an award. He manipulated people's emotions through television performance. That's essentially an actor.
That's my point. That's where I was going with it.
Like to award other comedies, so,
That's where I'm going with it. Like, the guy, you're giving the guy something that's reserved for, like, talk show hosts and actors. You're now awarding a politician with, like, an entertainment award. So is politics entertainment or is entertainment politics?
Well, to be fair, he's not going to get an award for doing a good job because New York has among the highest amount of deaths related to COVID. So, no one's going to pat him on the back for that.
But David, he wrote a book. He's got a book deal.
Whoa. So he's an entertainer.
How I saved New York State. He was Andrew Cuomo. For those who don't know, Andrew Cuomo lives on the other side of the state from us, like 7 hours away, and he dictates legislation to the other side of the state when we live a different way of life than those people. If that's not bad enough, this past week, he trash talked Western New York, which is it's like 6 or 7 counties in my area. Trash talked Western New York and said that we have not taken COVID seriously. And that's why our numbers are rising. And he has officially labeled my county of Erie as orange and all of the surrounding counties as yellow.
Yeah. They're talking about red as early as next week, too. And, like, they're not giving time to see whether their restrictions help or not, because isn't the incubation period like 2 weeks? If they're changing the regulations in 1 week, how do they know if it helped or not? I mean, I don't think it is.
Well, they do have a year.
They're not taking it seriously, but then the people that go out and riot and protest and loot and all this time for all these months that they've been doing it, those people not taking it seriously? You're applauding these people. You're standing with these people. You're spraying Black Lives Matter on sidewalks and all this other stuff. That wasn't not taking it seriously? The mayor of Chicago's videotaped screaming into a microphone without a mask on with a bunch of people in a crowd because Biden won? Like, what? So what is it?
They were outside.
We're not taking it seriously. You know what it is? Is because there's Republican resistance in this side of the state. That is what it is, man. This is like super political shit. And I'm going to tie this into 2 other things. The sheriff of Erie County, Tim Howard, came out and he was on our local radio station. And he says the governor and everybody that wants to enforce all these laws that, you know, whether it mask mandates or shut down businesses or whatever, he says we don't have the resource, let alone the authority to enact these laws. They're not laws, they're mandates. You're mandated to wear a mask. It's not a law. You're mandated to 6 feet social distance. It's not a law. You're mandated to only have 25% capacity in your business. It's not a law. So the sheriff, which constitutionally the sheriff is the most powerful member of that community in his district. He even overrides the president, the governor, all of them people. He can override constitutionally because he's elected to that county. The most powerful separations of power, super important. So there was a meeting in Hamburg, which is one of the southern Orchard Park. Yeah, but it was a guy. He owns a local gym. He owns a gym. They wanted to get business owners together because of all the upcoming COVID mandates, and they're worried about the businesses. And they got about 100 people together. They had them in a Facebook group, and then they showed up and they were in the meeting. And during the meeting, the Department of Health came there and said that they received an anonymous tip that they were having a mass gathering and it wasn't safe. And they brought the sheriffs with them. And the citizens in that meeting pushed not only the health department out of there, but they also pushed the sheriffs out of there. And they said, you have no authority here. This is a private party. Basically, get the hell out of here. And I will tell you right now, people are this is going to happen all over the country.
Yeah.
And it should.
Yeah, well, I'm sure after almost a year now, people are getting pretty sick of it.
Well, how long can they go like this? We talked about last
week. Just 15 days. That's all they need.
Yeah, we were flattening the curve, and now it's wait till vaccine. Oh, after the election, we're going to get results.
Like, well, no. It's 15 days, and then wait till the vaccine, and then don't take the vaccine.
And then the new normal. The new normal.
Well, ultimately, like what the thing is that, like, I mean, can either of you think of a single time where the government had a power, and then they voluntarily gave that power up without public pressure? That's going to be the issue with that, is that they're going to want to continue these restrictions purely because it's an extra thing in their utility belt. I mean, even when alcohol prohibition got repealed, it was only because people were doing jury nullification all over the country. Now every jury was basically saying, we don't view drinking as a crime, we're not going to charge them. And the federal government was basically
jury nullification.
Well, in New York, they don't let you do that. We're the one state in the union where they actually have a law against jury nullification.
Jeez, go figure.
You know that? And if you're in any of the other 49 states, you can rule. The juries can rule on whether a law is legitimate or not. But in New York State, they tell you can't.
Yeah, it goes beyond. It goes beyond just whether that person's like legal of that crime or not. It goes like the jury can actually bring into question whether the law is like a good law or not. Basically.
Jury, basically.
Yeah, and other states like I know New Hampshire. I believe it was New Hampshire. Live Free, Die Hard. They actually educate you as a juror. Before they tell you, like, look, here's your jury rights and stuff. And, yeah, it's a lost civic. But that's cool to know, man.
Right.
Go figure, New York. Go figure.
Yeah. But either way, that's my point. At a certain point, people are going to have to push back, or otherwise, I mean, they're just going to ram this down our throat forever. Especially if, let's say, the election fraud lawsuits don't go anywhere, and we don't have Trump as president. I mean, Biden's just going to go right along with this, the globalist idea of let's reset everything.
But Kevin,
own nothing and you'll be happy.
Kevin,
oh, gee, that's a great opening statement.
Biden is a moderate, and he's going to bring us together.
Great
so
uniter. He's the great uniter, though.
But basically, our current
the media doesn't lie. Fake news.
You sound like you're being divisive with your words. We're trying to unite here.
The current president is the only really world leader standing in the way of this great reset idea. Everybody else is pretty lockstep on it. But, without the United States, they can't push it forward. So that's why I think they would have had all the incentive in the world to rig the 2020 vote. I think they got cocky in 2016 and said this reality TV show host isn't going to get in there. And they didn't really bother. But I think this time they were more prepared. Because, I mean, like I said, with him being the only person standing in the way of global governance, I mean, why wouldn't those people have the incentive of, well, why don't we just get this one guy out of the way and ram it through like we were gonna? So and then they're going to ram it now, so we don't have another chance to fuck it up again.
So I personally know the answer, but let me ask you: if we already have things like the WHO and the UN and whatever else you want to these global deals and things like that, what further would happen, without any type of resistance to this globalism?
Basically, that sovereign states throughout the world would basically cease to exist. You wouldn't have any. You'd basically have regional directors where there'd just be some unelected appointed person that would say what happens in various regions of the world
over presidents and kings and everything.
Be a global banker state. That's the irony of a lot of these liberals and stuff being all pro Biden is you not realize he's going to hand the world over to banking elites, the royal family, and the Vatican groups of people you would claim to hate. They also seem to have this problem of companies are corrupt and capitalism, but if it's a media company or any of that, then that's A-okay. There's no corruption there. It's really? That'd be the one area you think would automatically get corrupted.
Well, that's what's ironic about they hate monopolies, right? They hate big Standard Oil, right? Rockefeller. They hate rich capitalists, Jeff Bezos, but Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, they can have a monopoly. They can censor people too. Jeff Bezos has never censored one person that bought a book from him. He's like, no, I want everybody to buy books from me. They openly, this fact is disputed. This tweet's deleted. They have the power of monopoly. They can censor and, town crier kind of thing, right? They can silence you in the town square of social media. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy to see the open contradictions. But then again, the Democrats' whole campaign strategy was that they're not Donald Trump. So I saw a headline this week that it said, what will the Biden administration do with the COVID pandemic? It's aren't we supposed to know this already? I forgot. You took 8 months of a campaign season just running against a guy that you hated and told people to hate. And then now that he's supposedly the president, the office of president-elect, which I don't even think is a real office. They made it up.
It's not. It's a media invention.
Well, the seal looked awfully official, Kevin.
Well, where else would he conduct his business until he's actually president?
What business? He's not president. That's something else that's funny to me. When they're like, Trump's not including him in the transition team. It's how much transition is he supposed to be in? Should he be there on every meeting? Really, what's...
Here's your transition. Here's your keys on January 21st.
Yeah, you can 20th. Transition at 12:01 on the 21st. That's when you can start your transition.
I think the administration is also looking at it as if this guy's compromised and owned by China and these various international leftists, why would we give them intelligence if we don't have to?
Well, sure. Right. And if we can prove, right, Kevin, I think you can roll right into breaking some of this down for us. But I'll ask you this question. If Trump can prove so heavily of election fraud with the Chinese in particular, we'll say, and tie it to Biden and other people, why wouldn't he just dump this information or various means? Do you think they're using the courts to officially reveal all this stuff to the American people?
That's the smart way to go about it, because if you just go on national television and be like, here's our legal strategy, your opponent then has time to analyze and come up with a rebuttal to that information.
I don't even mean that. I just mean like if they have the smoking gun on Biden, right? Like right here, here's the fact, and they just release it, like WikiLeaks, for example. Like why wouldn't they do that if they had the dirt? But do you think if they go through the proper means and get it in front of a judge, it will be on a judicial record? It will be like an official document. Like,
yeah,
I'm just wondering if like that's really the golden apple in the campaign strategy to win back the presidency is to get this on record in front of the right judge or in front of the judges, so that it doesn't seem that it can just be a conspiracy.
I think a lot of what it is, like I said, it's a procedural thing. You want to introduce certain things in court so that way your opponent doesn't have time to manipulate that information out of the public. Then the judge is seeing a distorted view by the media and who else on that information. You also like the reassigning of the circuit judges that just happened on Friday. I know I sent you the screenshot with, I can't remember who got put in charge of what states, but I know five of the swing states, the circuit courts just got redecided to where, so Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona are under like Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh, and all of those folks who are more like who then are going to see every one of these lawsuits that's getting rejected at the state level. When it goes to circuit court, they're going to be the ones to see it. So it may not even have to be a thing where it gets all the way to SCOTUS. And once it gets to, like, particularly Alito for Pennsylvania, for instance, he already told them all those ballots that came in after November 3rd, you need to set off to the side. Pennsylvania did not do that. They went ahead with pushing towards certification of just the results as they stand now. But he's not going to take too kindly to that when it does get to his bench that, hey, I told you to do this. Why are you presenting me this result when you're supposed to bring that one? And I imagine you're going to see that same type of thing in all these other states, where they don't want to listen to whatever orders end up coming down. Or like a lot of these states already have law in place. You're not supposed to accept votes after 8 p.m. on election day. And in Pennsylvania, for instance, Governor Wolf just went to the state Supreme Court and said, hey, the legislature refused to extend the deadline for me. Do you want to extend it? He's not allowed to do that. Only the legislature is allowed to do the extension. So these are various details that are going to get looked at. Like, you collected votes in a way you weren't legally able to, and you just tried to go around the process when you were told, no, you can't do it that way.
And and you said the precedent is a Supreme Court ruling back in the 80s or 1800s or something that
it's one of those I think they're going to look at. Like I said, that ruling was basically that fraud vitiates everything. You can't present like, here's results, and that's not actually legitimate. That's, like I said, I think that's probably going to be the angle they're going to take. But I mean, there's all sorts of like constitutional checks and balances. It could be a 12th Amendment situation, or it ends up going to a House delegation where there's one vote per state. And that's either based on governorships or state legislatures. I can't remember, but either way, the Republicans have a majority in that. So,
but would they go with Trump?
They have to by law with the 12th Amendment. So if your state's Republican, you have to vote Republican. If your state's Democrat,
they do.
There's no faithless electors for that. There's
Gotcha.
It's not like
see now that it's funny that it would be like this. Like, talk about playing a chess match, right? Yeah, it's funny that the Republicans would get the W just based on they always speak about winning hearts and minds, right? Like, that's the way to get your argument. And people can say whatever they want about Biden being the so-called president, regardless what happens. But the Republicans did pick up seats. So obviously somewhere in these areas, people saw the Republican mindset as like, okay, let's try this, or we like this, or so. Yeah, it's weird because I know people will bitch that like, well, Biden won more votes, Biden won this and Biden won that, and then they all want the technicalities. They all want to win by a technicality. They don't want to lose by them.
Yeah, but did he win? And that's the question.
I mean, you also issue that a lot of these voting machines can be run with like I think it's called a weighted race feature, to where they could set the machine to where, like, let's say a vote for Biden counts as 1.25 votes, but a vote for Donald Trump counts for 0.75. Those are hypothetical numbers. I don't know what ratio they use, but if you look at like a lot of the New York Times results that they put out from like Michigan and other places, a lot of the votes are in decimals, which that's not supposed to happen. A vote's just a vote. It's not divisible. But that's something that's happening on the back end, to where they're shaving votes that way, and like without.
Why are we trusting? Like the Greeks, they used to use. The Greeks used to use rocks to vote. They had two pillars. Yes, yay and nay, and they would go and put a rock. Everybody would just put one rock on the pillar that they wanted. Why are we using robots?
Because rocks are racist, Ryan. Get with the times.
Yeah.
That's a good point, David. All rocks matter.
But I mean, I feel like also like for the integrity of future elections, like they're talking about like, oh, let's make these pandemic rules on mail-in votes permanent. Like that's one of the things Biden's pushing for. Is like, oh, I like this system. Like if that happens and like there's no longer checks and balances on people being able to observe votes in the future, we just won't win elections. There won't be any point to voting. So that's why this is so important. I feel like
people say their vote doesn't matter now, so they'll be okay with it.
Yeah. I said, even if you're somebody who hates Trump, like it should appall you if there's proof that it was stolen from him, because then they'll steal from somebody you like in the future,
or they already have.
Or Bernie Sanders twice,
yeah. Right?
And you still go to the party. It's like flee a shit state, go to Texas, and you're like, "Oh, Texas is shit all of a sudden. We're moving again." You fucking dumb fucks. It's like repeatedly stubbing your toe for all eternity. That's what they're doing. Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, if there's like all these glitches, like on various 30 states use that software, like I almost feel like there should just be an a national audit just for that reason. Like we need to go back to like paper and pen, like put it in a box, people count it at the end of the night. You can't trust machines in this context. And they say these machines aren't supposed to be connected to the internet, but like the Dominion software, it has to be connected to the internet for it to work right.
Yeah. And even if it wasn't, that doesn't mean there couldn't be software on the back end.
Or somebody just with a screwdriver and a thumb drive. From what I understand, what I looked into, it takes like 7 minutes to hack one of these machines if you know what you're doing. It's not difficult. It never has been.
But, well, I'll tie this around to the Chinese. I mean, there was over last summer, the Chinese hacked one of our ships with a computer. It was the size of a grain of rice.
That's a big piece of rice.
Size of a grain of rice. But no, they hacked into a ship's computer software with it.
Yeah.
You know? And so you don't need much.
No. And I would find it hard to think that the Chinese wouldn't be extremely motivated to get Trump out of there, given that Trump was the most anti-China head of the state on earth. Like, with no contest. I mean, he was calling out China to a degree they've never dealt with before.
Right. Hitting them right on the nose. Yeah, well, it's also crazy, right? Because Snowden comes out and tells us how, like, basically our smartphone, which we all have this belief that it's super secure and all this other things, and not only does he tell us, but he shows us proof, and people witness the proof every day of, like, talking about something on your phone, and then you go to your phone and the ad is for that item, for example. So, like, we're like used to this, and then they're gonna say, like, oh no, there's nothing to worry about. The machines can't be hacked. The machines can't be this. The machines are this. When all of the other gadgets in our life are all either Trojan horses, or they break, or they need updates, or whatever it is. Like, technology's not as secure. It's just not.
That's why I have a hard time believing voting machines wouldn't have a back door, because they'd be the one electronic device where they didn't do that. It'd be a hell of an outlier. You know, I mean, like I said, and people don't think about how severe of a thing that is to our IT security. If there's a backdoor for the government for them to read your text messages or emails or whatever, that means there's a backdoor for anyone. There's no way to code in only government can come through here. If you can find that backdoor and exploit it, you can get in. I would imagine that the amount of like identity theft and like credit cards stolen, people getting people's social security numbers and everything exploded post Patriot Act. If like I were to actually look up statistics, I imagine it skyrocketed.
I'm going to reference a headline here. This is a CNN article from 2016. Computer scientists urge Clinton campaign to challenge election results. And here's what the first two paragraphs say. Hillary Clinton's campaign is being urged by a number of top computer scientists to call for the recount. Hold on, you ready for the states? Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. According to the source with knowledge. According to a source with knowledge of the
people familiar with the matter.
People familiar with the matter. How Orwellian, man. People, you know, You know, dude, I'll really say I'm mad at people. I'm mad at people using Orwellian, but they're using it wrong. Like you see the like super Orwellian things, like according to sources with knowledge. What an ass backwards way to say making it the according to source with knowledge. Imagine like your source. They're flagging Twitter posts right now because you don't have a source. But imagine if your source was with knowledge. It doesn't fly on Wikipedia, but it flies in journalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's CNN's own article from 2016. And of course, nobody, no objectivity here. I heard a term this week that I'm going to start using, I think, instead of Orwellian. It's called post-truth world. And I think that's where we are living. I think it's very true. I think the truth died with the Patriot Act. I think the truth died with 9/11.
It's funny
that's
going
when you
back.
stop getting truth, and that's
that CNN article went back to
earlier.
That CNN article went back to 16, but you can go back to 12, and Donald Trump was out there tweeting that Mitt Romney was having votes switched on him. No. And of course, Romney did nothing about it.
No. Well, why would Romney do anything about it, Dave, when he's the establishment to begin with? That's why it's so ironic when they bring up, they gloss over Romney in the headlines. Like, look, even the establishment, like, does the news not understand that we don't want the establishment? Like, Trump voters, MAGA people, they're like, oh, how Trump shaped the GOP. It's like, yeah, because the people voting for him are not Republicans. They're Trumpites, man. They're Trumpkins, whatever they're called. They're Trump supporters. We didn't come to the GOP because we believe all the certain things. Like, we want what this guy's selling us. And the rest of you, get the fuck out of here. Like, that's what that revolution, the Trump takeover was. But they're entrenched, the swamp, all that stuff. They're just entrenched. And then Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, these people cycling that we always hear about. It's like, CNN's holding these people to high esteem. Like, they're these super awesome Republican people. You know, they're golden child. They're sacrificing the golden calf for the Democratic Party to paint Donald Trump as the bad guy. It's ridiculous.
Well,
like
because
the establishment has been screwing. No, I'm sorry, I cut you both off, but the establishment's just been screwing us forever, and we're told we're going back to it. It doesn't make sense. Like, we don't want the establishment. I don't think anybody. I've seen polls that there's even Biden supporters that think Donald Trump won, and they want a recount. I am seeing there is polls like that. Tim Pool's been talking about it a lot on his YouTube channel. I urge everybody to check his stuff out. He's good work. But like, yeah, he's been doing stuff about it. Polls. He's like, there's Biden people that think Trump beat him. You know?
Yeah. No, I know a couple people like that voted for Biden, but like saw like as information has come out, they almost have like an uneasy feeling like, well, he doesn't seem like he really deserved it, and like they would have rather it went the other way, even though they were Biden. They feel like their vote doesn't count.
They stole it from Biden. They gave it to Biden for Bernie. Bernie won, gave it to Biden. Same thing in 2016. So they've already done it. They already did it in that party, and then when they do it to the other party, like, there's no widespread voter fraud. You did fucking widespread voter fraud in 2 different elections in different states with the same equipment. Like, I mean, it's also not possible.
I mean, why wouldn't they try to rig it after they tried, 4 different times to impeach him or coup him for things he didn't do? Like, the second he got in there, they weren't accepting that he won. They were like, oh, no, the Russians influenced this. This isn't a legitimate presidency. And then they're mad when he doesn't.
What a beautiful way to say hacked.
Yeah. But then they expect him to just roll over and be like, oh, well, I guess I lost. And it's like, well, why would I think you guys were being toward, given your history? So that's hopefully, like, he has some kind of rabbit under his hat that he can pull out. That, like, I've heard rumors of like maybe ballots are watermarked or things like that. Hopefully those things are true. But I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of wishy-washy information out there as where it's going to go. And I really don't think we know what's going to happen until it really gets presented in court.
Yeah. So we don't know what's going to happen. But let's get into the actual bulk of what we do know.
The Kraken?
Release the Kraken. So I just want everyone to know here, just so I can pull this up. Kevin and John John is part of this as well. John's not on, obviously, because John is afraid of the camera. But this is, I don't know if you can see it, but this is a message that Kevin sent me. I don't know if it's going or not.
Not really showing. Oh, there we go.
Like, it's...
Can't really see the bubble of the text, but I can see...
Yeah, but it's super lengthy. Like, I could go for minutes. There's a lot there, so I'm interested in seeing what you got. I kind of know already, a little bit. I read through as many of them as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, we can go over any of those headlines that you want. I'm broadcasting from my phone, so I can't really go through the document myself. So, like, if there's any of those things that caught your eye, like, we can go over them.
So, here's a couple of things that's got me, and these were just screen grabs here. Let's start with the first one. You can't go from 92% of the votes counted to 95% of the votes counted and flip a 120,000 vote lead in Wisconsin. It's not possible. Wisconsin total votes before around 3 million to 3.2 million. What's 3%? 96,000 at most. But Biden flipped 120,000 votes deficit. That defies math. So right out of the gate, that first one is saying it's literally not mathematically possible.
Yeah, well, it is if one vote for Biden is 1.25 or 1.37 or whatever, like Kevin said. If that is a thing that they count it.
Well,
sure,
plus I've seen reports that like in various areas they shaved off a certain number of votes from the Trump column before they added the Biden votes so that the percentages would add up. So there's a lot of like creative accounting, so to speak, that like was done in a lot of these ledgers from what we're able to see. Like I said, I mean, there's a lot of like people that really know what they're talking about, mathematicians and statisticians and software engineers that have looked at all this data and said a lot of this stuff really doesn't add up. And like I said, we'll just have to see where that goes. But from what I'm able to see, I'm very skeptical that the election results that we were told are the honest results.
Sure. So I think this was the drop-in roll vote manipulation. I think this was kind of interesting. There's a whole video on it, but Kevin, I'm assuming you went through and kind of watched a little bit of this. Can you just explain what drop-in roll voting is?
That was the video from Gateway Pundit, right? I think that was the thing where, like I said, they were basically like shaving off certain amounts of votes and then putting votes in. Like that, it goes over sort of like the software flipping and like deleting votes. I think that video kind of like touched on, but like various states, like even ones that like weren't considered swing states, had they not done all this software manipulation, he might have like won in Virginia. I mean, from what I've heard, like Minnesota was using the same machines as all the swing states that are contested. So I almost feel like they should have tentacles into more areas looking at more of these states. But like, I mean, from what that video goes over, which, I mean, I honestly don't feel confident enough to like describe what they're describing in that video, like offhand. But I also watched so much stuff about this, like that I only remember certain details. But yeah, like I said,
isn't it crazy that they've already suspended? I asked the older guy at my job, the guy's got to be pushing retirement age. And I asked him, I was like, this is probably the craziest thing you've ever seen in your life. He said, we always had, the next morning, we always knew who was president. And I just think that being adamant in itself is enough that should be like a wake-up call to people that this is completely possible. Because they had to uncall it. Like the media had to uncall it. It's actually not official, right? Even though I've seen like yesterday or Friday, they said that they did recounts and that they were all for Biden, so it solidifies it.
Even when the media called it to begin with, that still wasn't official.
Here's the thing, though. Right. They just did that recount in Georgia, but the governor doesn't want to sign off on it. He's like, you didn't actually audit or look at other things. That's breaking, I think, either today or yesterday. That, like, he didn't sign off on what the Secretary of State sent him. So Georgia's kind of still in play. We'll have to see what happens there.
Technically, right.
Because he was upset there wasn't the signature verification and everything else. Which, if you do all of that, it is very possible that would flip it the other way. Because a lot of these states, people were seen running votes multiple times. The key witness from Venezuela, who had the signed affidavit, who witnessed Chavez first use this software, said was when he saw on election night that they stopped counting in those various states, that he knew that they were counting in the background and they were adjusting, that the algorithm wasn't enough. From what Powell was saying in the conference on Thursday, in states like Georgia where machines randomly shut down, that's because so many people were voting for Trump that the algorithm couldn't keep up with it. It confused the machine and it froze up.
So you really, I just got goosebumps, man. I really did. You think there was that, like it was actually a fucking red tsunami? You believe that in your body?
I do believe so. Like if it actually wasn't manipulated with, like he probably would have gotten both houses and gotten the second term. As I was saying, I don't. Like I said, there's just so much stuff that doesn't add up, and there's so much stuff that we probably aren't able to see yet for like the reasons I went over earlier. If you want to introduce certain things as evidence,
Sure.
But I mean, like I said, the guy who witnessed this in Venezuela happen, like he said, he saw the server room where votes were getting manipulated. They haven't changed how Dominion works since the Venezuela days. It's basically the same thing.
So let's talk about the media narrative for why Trump lost and why he had a big lead and then it dwindled. Was that the big holdup in all these swing states were waiting to count the mail-in ballots, and everyone knew that Trump voters were going to vote in person and Democrats were going to largely vote mail-in. So the statistical irregularities that you saw, I guess, were somewhat predicted. Do you think any of that could hold water?
I think there's an element of more people probably voted for Biden by mail, but I don't think you'd have 100% dump of over 100,000 votes. That's like flipping a coin 186 times in a row, 186,000 times in a row, and every single time it's heads. That's not how that typically goes. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's fishy. I can't guarantee that you didn't legitimately have that, but it's especially coming in at 4:30 in the morning after they were supposed to be done counting. There's a lot of it that really just does not add up. And they had told the observers to go home at 10 o'clock. Oh, we're done counting. So all those trucks with over 100,000 votes show up when there's no poll watchers.
Right.
So those have to be thrown out according to the letter of the law by default because nobody was able to witness it and actually check that the signature matches on the envelope and everything else. You're not supposed to count those.
Yeah.
And Biden's lead in all of these states are votes that were counted under those circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was what the big swings were in a lot of these states, Arizona, and Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and whatever.
I don't think the party that's I don't think it's coincidence that the party that pushed anti-law and order statements for, let's not exaggerate, at least 5 years, that they would be the one that would try to manipulate and go around election laws, because obviously laws to them are just like an implementation of whatever they want. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, it's just such an irony that, like I said, 4 years ago, it was like Russia, the integrity of our elections. But when it's them messing with the integrity, it's like, oh, don't even ask that. Are you kidding me? Your elections can't be hacked. It's like, but you just
they said Russia did it through Facebook ads.
Right, but that's my point.
Like that's how fragile our system is. But then you stand by the integrity of it.
That's what I'm saying. It's like they don't actually want integrity, or they'd be okay with these various checks. In Wisconsin right now, you're seeing all these gaslighting articles about, oh, the Trump team is obstructing the recount. It's like, why? Because they're making you throw out a ballot that's not legitimate? You're not supposed to count those. Count every vote, that whole thing. And some votes, like I said, somebody died in the 80s, and that somebody voted in their name.
Well, one of the things you shared is a lot of the people, like the birth dates were artificial. I know this was in Pennsylvania. Like some of the votes were... The people would have been older than the oldest known living person in the state. They were some of them were just random. January 1st, 1900 was the birth date. Like this person is 119 years old, 120 years old.
Then there were affidavits from people where they were told, oh, if information's incomplete on a ballot, use default birth dates like that, just so the system will take it. Yeah. But if it's incomplete, it's not supposed to count. You're supposed to fill out the form correctly.
Yeah,
just like if you're filling out a job
that sounds like an election loophole.
Gets thrown away. You're supposed to follow instructions.
And then, of course, there was the county. Was this in? I might have to go back and double check this. You might know offhand. This might be in Michigan, but where that woman sent out the mass email stating that they have to use blue or black ink before election day, but on election day they can just use Sharpie. It's fine.
Oh, that was Arizona. That was Maricopa.
Arizona. Yeah, okay.
But the thing is, the Arizona put out a video saying, "Oh, if you vote with Sharpie, it's fine. The machine will take it." And then you have internal emails where they're saying, well, it won't really take it, but give it to people election day anyway.
Well, not only that, but
the Trump people would come vote on person on election day.
in the machine's own instructions, it says you cannot use Sharpie. It could cause an issue with the counting.
Right. So, like I said, they gaslit people into thinking, oh, your vote will count with Sharpie. And then all the Trump areas, they were given Sharpies, so half of those votes probably didn't count. But if you actually do a manual audit of the ballots, you would find the ones written with Sharpie, and then you can count them then. But the problem is, like, they're trying to, the Secretary of State in Arizona is like, oh, there's nothing to see here, blah, blah, and trying to, like, move over doing that. But the Arizona governor has said, because there's all these litigation, I will not sign off on anything from the Secretary of State until this is resolved.
Sure.
Because you can't certify something that's fraudulent. I mean, that the governor would be committing a crime himself.
If they knew it, if they knew it was fraudulent.
That's right. But I mean, Powell's argument is that a lot of them do know that because they all got fancy financial packages. They accepted the Dominion systems in their state.
Sure, and that's where this is going to get tricky, though, because not to sound like Tucker Carlson here, but they're going to have to, not necessarily to the media, they don't have to prove anything, but when they go to courts, they're going to have actual physical evidence that there was fraudulent elections going on. So things like irregularities aren't going to hold as proof for a fraudulent election.
Well, that depends who's pointing out the irregularities. The fact that there's people that worked for Dominion, that guy that was alongside Hugo Chavez, and all the rest of that, those affidavits, actually, some of them will carry the weight of evidence because the legal standard is you need to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt.
Sure.
You don't have to prove it 100%. As long as you can prove, like, this is where the evidence points you, you don't have to have the entire picture. But as long as the judges can see what you're trying to construct with the evidence, that's what you're going for. So, like, a lot of people think legal standards are stricter than what they are, to where you'd have to have a higher burden of proof than you actually do. But, like, a lot of it is going to come down to, like, when these allegations are made, the other side isn't going to have a reasonable explanation for why these things happened. And that's where a lot of it's going to fall apart. If they can't have a plausible deniability answer to here's why votes got deleted, or they're not able to prove, oh, that was a human error, let's fix that. Or let's say somebody's destroyed some of the ballots so they can't be audited. All of that is basically an admission of guilt from the legal standard. That's going to be held up as then, well, you guys probably cheated if you're not going to let us look at it. I mean, that's typically how courts go about these things. So I would imagine that's how it would go here. I mean, the big hurdle is just going to be, is he able to prove that this happened to enough votes that it would change the outcome of the election?
Yeah.
The SCOTUS isn't going to want to give a ruling that, like, well, there's fraud, but Biden still wins.
Sure.
They're going to want to rule in a way that they overturn results.
Right. So, speaking of things that are kind of fishy, this is in one of the pictures he sent me. This is from Sidney Powell. We have over 600 files flipped from Trump to Biden. That's over 4 million votes. We have evidence of Germany rigging the numbers while counting in Frankfurt. The head of Dominion, this is where I really like. The head of Dominion is the new advisor on Biden's administration. Joe paid $50 million and had governors use Dominion this election. So some would say, at the very least, it's at the very least maybe not fraudulent, but there's definitely interference. I mean, somebody running for president paid states to use the software.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also, like, these Dominion systems.
It's not collusion, David. It's not collusion.
These Dominion systems, the back end of it is basically just like a Windows 10 computer. So you can literally just go into a directory of folders, have a bunch of votes for Trump in a folder, and delete it. That's what she's basically alleging there, that's what happened. Or, like, a lot of votes were laundered through George Jorgensen, I guess, to where, like, her totals got manipulated, and some of those would get shifted over to Biden.
So this was in Pennsylvania?
I don't know if that happened. I can't remember offhand what states that was happening, but any state where her totals got manipulated, that's what happened.
It could have, because Pennsylvania was using Dominion software.
Yeah.
So people in Pennsylvania
it's very possible you accidentally voted for Biden.
I was going to say, people in Pennsylvania who voted for Jorgensen, not naming names, they could have accidentally voted for Biden.
Yeah.
Way to throw your vote away, David.
At least I voted for the guy who won.
By proxy. It's like voting by osmosis.
I guess I contributed to Biden's election victory.
But yeah, like I said, Representative Louis Gohmert seems to believe that like people in the military seized the server that Dominion was feeding to over in Frankfurt. So that'll be interesting too, because then there's probably a log on that computer of every modification to votes that was made.
Kevin, glance over the headline. Tell the story for those who don't know. There was a server for Dominion. It was confiscated by a military. We don't know which military or who has it, but
I believe it was ours. Like,
we believe, but we don't actually like. It wasn't like
you can see where that plays out. I just think it's an interesting thing to be in the news that like there's that level of interest in like what's happening here. From everything I've been able to read, it was the good guys who got it. But like I said, we'll have to see what happens. But if that's the case, like I said, this is going to be very interesting because that would be hard evidence of tampering if they did, in fact, acquire that.
I think. All right. So, Dave, was there more on the thing that you were going to breeze over?
Oh, there's a pile in here. There was one more I wanted to get to real quick though, because this was pretty interesting to me. Again, this isn't hard evidence, but this is definitely things that is. I mean, it's definitely fishy. I'm going to try my best to say this. I do not do well with these kinds of things. But billionaire Guo Wengui, don't know how to say it, claimed the Dominion voting systems were developed by the Founder Group. The Founder Group is a subsidiary of Peking University owned by the Chinese government.
There's Chinese parts in the Dominion machines too, which you could have a hardware backdoor on those.
Well, to be fair, there's Chinese parts in just about everything.
Yes, but I feel like something like voting machines that shouldn't be allowed.
We can't make those in America. It's so arbitrary, man.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, there's from everything I've been able to ascertain, Dominion seems to have connections to all sorts of left-wing and communist groups around the world.
Do you know if Dominion has offered campaign finances directly to any Democrat governors or Biden or?
Various Dominion, there's donations to the Clinton Foundation and other Democrat groups from Dominion. I mean, I know at one point or another I sent a screenshot of that in the chat.
Because that's pretty easy. I'm sure Dominion didn't donate to the Trump campaign. That's all I'm saying.
No, their head of security was in like some Antifa group chat, and people were like, "Oh, what about Trump actually wins?" And he caught the Eric Coomer, I think his name was. A lot of his information has gotten scrubbed from the internet since. But he basically said, "Oh no, Trump won't win." I made fucking sure of that.
So isn't that very obvious? Again, I mean, that's the mission of guilt. Again, it isn't necessarily proof or evidence, but it's definitely interference. I mean, you can't have systems that are used for voting in states that are donating to elections and campaigns. I mean, isn't that pretty?
Donating to? No, I mean it's bad either way.
Well, it's not an election mailing, so it doesn't matter.
If they were donating to the Trump campaign, I'm sure people would be quite suspicious.
For sure.
Especially if it was the system was created by the Russians. That'd be a huge deal. Have to impeach him again.
Yeah, they probably would.
The only thing that I got out of the whole Russiagate thing was that the average American is oddly obsessed with prostitutes.
That was money well spent.
He's peeing on the bed that Obama slept in. Like, what? You believe that? Yeah, I believe that. Be like, oh, how you feel about Bilderberg Group? That's a conspiracy. All right, homie. I'll see you later.
Yeah, the peeing on the bed story is especially believable when you remember that Trump famously was a germaphobe for how many years? Didn't even shaking hands.
Well, I'll let you know. The first thing that I would do after getting prostitutes in an expensive hotel room is to pee on it. So, I don't know. Maybe he's into it. I don't know. I'm sure there's some weird billionaires out there. The movie Wolf on Wall Street ruined it for billionaires for me. I think they're all drug addicts now, but besides the point.
All the evidence out there points to the Seal dossier just being a manufactured thing that they could basically just pin on them. They would have used anything.
Well, it's not collusion, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, either way, there's no legal crime collusion technically. Like that isn't like a law. That's just sort of a.
Oh, isn't it ironic they use the term that they can't even pin? Oh my God, there's so many levels to it. Like the term that they're using to cycle in the media isn't even something that you can charge somebody with.
No.
But they treat it like it is. In the court of public opinion, it's a real thing. Collusion. Well, he colluded with Russia. Okay, define collusion legally. Like, what's the crime for collusion? There isn't one. That's what you're telling me?
No, his real crime was that he didn't march in lockstep with globalism like every other head of state. That's all.
President Xi did say that globalism is inevitable.
So he said.
Gee, Wingy.
So I'm glad that the guy who is supposed to be president for life, that runs the People's Republic of China, even though they're straight open communists, I'm glad they can have the inversion on reality. And I love that we're trusting what other countries say about this country, which is something I always stand against, is that I don't care what other countries think of us, but we're seeing this getting cycled in our media just about embracing globalism. And once again, Kev, you know this just like everybody else in our group knows this, that people don't really know what that means. And that was what was so crucial about these trade deals and stuff that Trump got out of, or was supposed to be. And all this, the wall is a way to have a sovereign nation and never have it move. Your borders won't leave if there's a wall there. Like all these little steps that secure nationalism, which secure identity, which secure culture, they're being alleviated. And then they're also under attack, like the racist rock or institutions or the founding fathers or street names are offensive or it's this tear down of our culture. Because it's global, right? If globalism is inevitable, let's just use his term against them, right? Okay, if globalism is inevitable, how do you make sure that America becomes a global entity? Well, you got to destroy its identity, right? You got to destroy what it means to be an American because we're world civilians now. So, okay, well, think about the Earth. The Earth's more important than countries. Oh, all right, okay, yeah, it's you can see it, man, if you really take the time.
Oh yeah, and a lot of people just need to understand that globalism basically is just a euphemistic word for global communism ran by banks. And people go, "Oh, why would rich people want communism?" Well, because they could just sit on top of it, and then it's a means to just give everybody crumbs. Because sure, like if you give everybody however much money a month or however they do it, it seems like you're doing better on paper. But they just sit there with all their assets on top of it. Like even back when the United States had a high income tax, like 70-90%, which I obviously oppose, all of you, like your Rockefeller types and that, just put their money in trusts and foundations and never got taxed anyway. So they don't mind situations like that. They can ride out the storm of communism and keep their wealth. A small business can't.
Well, it was never true communism, right?
Better world.
It was never true communism. So they never even gave up their power in the first place. They just became a ruling elite. Communism, it never even gets to communism because of greed. That's what they always. That's what they told us in high school. You know what I mean? Like they bring up. I remember being told by my history teacher that it was capitalism that destroyed communism.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people
destroyed it. Russia started opening more businesses and everything, and people started having more freedom to do business. And they're like, we don't need the government. We can do this without the government.
Well,
not to mention everything else, but
a lot of liberals and like leftists don't seem to understand that Wall Street financed Hitler and the Russian Revolution. They paid Karl Marx to sit there and write all that stuff because then ultimately that stuff benefits them. Because like even in the Communist Manifesto, one of the planks is a privately owned central bank. Wait a minute, I thought there wasn't private ownership. But of the one thing that like where it actually matters, you have private ownership. But somehow that doesn't sketch people out, and I don't understand it. You think that one
collusion, Kevin,
goes away.
It's not collusion, so it doesn't matter.
All right. But
no, you're right, man. The central bank thing is a scary thing, right? I mean, that's really where this all comes down to because who buys, who has debt interest in America? China. China owns a good portion of our debt, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, from what I understand, yes. But there's also debt they have to us that is nobody leverages. Like for supposedly, when you adjust for inflation, I can't remember the number, but they owe an insane amount of money to some trust in Tennessee. That China borrowed money from us at one point, they never paid back. And when you adjust for a currency interest, it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. At least I can't remember. I wish I could look up an article right now, but
we should roll into mainland China and just take them out. That's my opinion. Install the Chinese American Republic.
Well, I mean, ideally, the way that Trump was
The
handling it,
UAR.
I'm not that I'm the biggest tariff fan in the world, but when China's been cheating you for however many years, it kind of like to balance things out sort of is a good thing. I mean, pre-COVID, 2019, China was having their worst year on record from all the tariffs and everything else we've been doing to them.
Yeah, and we were making money
I feel
off
like
a lot of
they
money.
released COVID on purpose, probably, so that way the United States would have to shut down. Be like, here, now you're going to have a bad economic year. It feels like tit for tat to a certain degree.
Well, it's all too perfectly articulated too, right? Like flatten the curve, turned into we talk about all the time, but like just all these progressions of things. The new normal, we're going to the old normal. Maybe it's time we get rid of holidays. Maybe it's time we stop shaking hands.
Maybe you need to tax your government to leave the house.
Yeah, maybe we gotta text people.
Right.
I don't know if you saw that. We broke that down. There was a headline a while back, a couple weeks ago maybe, but
In Greece.
It was in Greece. You have to text the local authorities to leave your house, and you will be told if you can or cannot.
Australia, you can't even walk your dog in areas where you can count the number of cases on your fingers.
Why?
Kevin, how great is it?
What, are you going to transmit it to a kangaroo? Does anyone live in Australia?
Kevin, how great is it that the very place that democracy was birthed, they have total authoritarianism to some degree over there.
I mean, it's not
so
really,
symbolic.
It's not too shocking though. The smallest governments tend to balloon into the biggest ones. I mean, there's numerous reasons for that, but I mean, ultimately, like once you give a government the ability, we get to just take money or force things, they always expand.
I was going to say we just talked about it. They're not going to willfully give up their power.
Right.
So once they get a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and 200 years later, you're here.
Well, that's why I feel like I said, potentially having this election result overturned is so important. I feel like if we don't finish the job right now of making America a sovereign country, they aren't going to give us another chance. That's how.
And do you think this is a beacon for the rest of the world too, Kevin? That a constitution can prevail?
If the light goes out here, the light goes out everywhere. I mean, this is the one thing holding it back. Is sort of the American spirit of we're going to self-govern, and other societies don't really have that.
Yeah, a coworker of mine.
Walk that spirit here. There's very little chance of some other place feeling that way. There wouldn't be, not to mention, what do you do when it's a global government? It's unelected. It's on every continent. You'd have to have a revolt on every continent at one time. Good luck with that.
Yeah, while they demonize the military to make you hate them and police, which would be the first line of defense against a corrupt takeover.
Yeah.
Yeah, a coworker of mine, he's a friend, but he watched one of our other episodes, and he, Dave, I'll tell you off air or something maybe, but he was, I don't want to say critical or heavy-handed, but he gave us some open advice and everything, and I appreciate all of his input. But he brought up about Europe, because I that's what we were talking about, was the point of view from America in World War II. And he looked at me and he said, we freed them. We saved Europe twice. And then they have the nerve to go and embrace communism and socialism and all these other programs that we saved them from. And then now it seems like, you see it all the time that they reference to what Europe's doing with COVID. And like, this is, globalism's inevitable, right? Well, look at what Europe's doing. How about you do this? Look at what China's doing. How about you do this? Look at what they're doing. How about you do this? That loss of national identity, the loss of how certain nations and certain groups of people handle things, and it's crazy. We gave them their freedom twice. They couldn't recognize tyranny twice. They couldn't stop global war, civil war, breaking into global war, and have these tyrants and these mass atrocities in the 20th century. We freed them from that, and then then we got to hear about it forever.
Well, I mean, ultimately, I feel the opposite. That globalism is not an inevitable thing, but that, let's say, even if he's not successful and they do shoehorn Biden in there through these illegitimate means, I feel like most people aren't going to accept that. I feel like there's a very large contingent in the United States who feels as I do that this wasn't carried out honestly, and that if we aren't able to vote, what is there left but to, get rid of the system as it currently stands, as the Second Amendment gives us the right to do. I mean,
I was just going to say this. We're going to be voting with bullets very soon.
That's where it's going to go at that point. If, like I said, if they actually put Biden in there when he didn't legitimately win, I feel like I said, there's probably 70 million Americans that wouldn't take too kindly to that. But I mean, the same way, if Trump overturns it, the people on the left side aren't going to take too kindly in it. We're in an interesting state of affairs.
If Trump overturns this election, the 100 days of riots in Portland and everything will be linen compared to the amount of things they're going to do.
Yeah. Well,
the fire that they are going to unleash. I mean, we talked about it last week. When all those businesses were boarding up their towns, that was a visual representation that said, we have been bullied, and if you don't vote our way, we are going to burn your cities to the ground because we didn't get what we wanted. That's what that meant.
Yeah.
They bullied us. They bullied the American people because they took our silence for granted and took it for weakness. And they just slowly eroded it. And like the people in Orchard Park and Hamburg came together and banded up and threw the police out of there over their businesses, it's going to happen in other areas, man. But bullets may be the new ballot box, man. If Trump somehow pulls this out of his ass, I don't see how there's any it's not going to be civil. We will be a constitutional crisis for sure.
Well, we're going to be a crisis either way.
Which I don't even know what it entails. What a constitutional crisis. Will a constitutional convention do us any good if half the people don't even believe in the Constitution and documents to begin with, and the elected representatives don't believe in the documents to begin with? How are we going to have a convention over something that is a crisis from our documents that nobody cares about?
Well, like I said, it's a crisis either way. Like if he manages to overturn it, you're going to have the overreaction by the left, and like you're going to see cities on fire again. But then you also have a constitutional crisis if Biden does manage to get in there, because he got in there illegitimately. They're just going to fraud their way every time. Then, because at that point, once you get away with it, it's we can get away with this. We'll just do it every time. And I don't think you're going to have somebody with the testicular fortitude down the road to fight it. They're just going to go, if they can rig this, it's probably a pretty powerful machine. I don't stand a chance. And I think people are just going to lie down. And that's
a good point. Yeah, Trump lost $1 billion running and becoming president in his net worth.
It has not been to him. The narrative that he makes money off this, the opposite is true.
Yeah, I don't know how you say he's not doing it. You can say anything about his character or whatever, but the guy lost like half of his net worth. President.
Because he betrayed all the people that thought he was their friend. Like he's not some elite just because he has money. That's where a lot of people get confused. They go, he's a billionaire. That means he's one of them. It's like, well, no, not necessarily. You can just happen to have money and not feel the same type of way as everybody else with money.
Especially if it's not collusion.
Like I said, it's just strange times in this country, just because no matter which way this goes, there's going to be ugliness.
So, I don't know if we're close. Just on that point, I don't know if we're close to the end or not. But I did want to wrap the show up with predictions. So I don't know if you guys had anything else, but I wanted to put some predictions out there. What we think is going to happen before January 20th.
Let's do it. Kevin, we'll go you first, man. What do you think?
I think from everything I've seen, like they have evidence enough to make a strong enough case to turn around at least a couple of the states. And like I said, hopefully he's successful, and I predict that he will be. But I mean, I could be wrong. We'll see what happens. But I mean, I just feel like if you do have election results that are being reported in decimals and all the other like weird things that there's no explanation other than that somebody tampered, that a result like that can't stand. That I mean, I just don't foresee if it does make it to SCOTUS, them certifying something that's fraudulent. They're not going to sign off on that, I don't think.
So you think that it will end up going to Supreme Court for sure?
With the way they redistrict the circuit judges, there's no way it isn't. They're overseeing all these cases now. Sure. So if some partisan hack judge throws out a lawsuit without even reading it, it'll come to their docket. And they'll see, wait a minute, why didn't you look at this? I mean, a lot of that process is going to get expedited now that they've redistricted, or whatever their term is for changing the circuits
Yeah,
around.
I have it here. We can real quick.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that it might come down to the Supreme Court pick that Trump put on the bench?
Yeah, I don't think that was by accident. That's for sure.
Incredible, man.
I think he knew. I think he knew it was coming.
Well, yeah, they tried to, like I said earlier, they tried to cool him how many times? Why wouldn't he be skeptical of the election?
So, this is what we were just talking about here. Circuit courts have been reassigned effective November 20th, 2020, ordered pursuant to Title 28, United States Code, Section 42. Michigan, Brett Kavanaugh. Wisconsin, Amy Coney Barrett. Pennsylvania, Sam Alito. Georgia, Clarence Thomas. Those are 4 major states.
And Thomas and Alito already were in that position. They didn't get moved around. But like, I know Michigan and Wisconsin, I think, were Kagan and Sotomayor before.
Sure.
They moved them around, who would not have been as favorable. They would have looked at the thing getting thrown out and go, oh, yeah, I would have threw it out too. But I also feel like once Thomas really gets a look at the Georgia situation, he's going to, not that a judge should do this, but I think he's going to remember how Biden treated him in his confirmation hearing all those years ago. And he's probably
It's a blood sport, right?
I've
Politics
waited
is a
30
blood
years
sport.
for this Joe type moment.
Let me
Average
just
Joe
to
Biden.
just to quote Ryan, isn't that a neat little box with a bow on it?
But yeah, and I also feel like Kavanaugh is going to feel a similar type of way after how Harris treated him.
Well, and this is the funny thing. They all were severely mistreated during their whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Their hearings, I suppose. Yeah.
right. They tried to tell Barrett she was racist because she adopted kids from Haiti, and it's like, isn't that a good thing to do?
They did, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they claim she was sexually assaulting her? Yeah.
They asked her, "Have you ever sexually assaulted anybody?"
Oh, that was Hirono. She's something else.
They're caricatures. Politicians aren't real people. They're caricatures.
Yeah. But no, like I said, I think we may be headed toward one of the most interesting upsets in American history. But I said, we'll see.
Wouldn't that be a fitting end to the year?
I mean, this year of all years, something like that would be likely to happen.
I'm going to make a prediction on 2020. 2020, it doesn't end. It just is the start of 2021. So I think the sucks just started, and we got to embrace it. I believe Joe Biden will stick and be president. I'm going to hold true to that. Yeah. The powers that be, if China did put this much money and time into it, I think they're going to get away with it, man. I hope they don't. My 2 fears with Joe Biden as president are China and the economy. So, I don't know.
And that's
Trump wins. I hope Trump can prove it. But I mean, dude, we're looking at if this was a football, this would be like a 4th and 500. And all you have is a kicker.
Yeah, it's a Hail Mary for sure. But I mean, Hail Marys have happened. So
don't want to talk about it.
We'll see what the political universe spins, my friend. But yeah, constitutional. Like you said, Kev, I agree with you, man. It is a constitutional crisis either way.
Yeah,
and hopefully, on the other side of this, after it's all crazy, maybe in February we can talk about a little bit, just like the lessons to learn from this election cycle. As far as getting it done correctly. Just. I wanted to bring up one quick thing. There's a meme going around. It's called the blue wave. It's like, this is the blue wave they were talking about. And it shows all the counties in America, and there might be 40 counties that are all blue. And that's just basically showing you where all the mass population of all the people in America are that can outvote the other rest of the population. So my point is kind of tying it back around to how the Republicans took the House and everything. 70 million people voting for Donald Trump are not just going to go to bed and not think they got fucked over. Especially when we watched the other side, took candidates to took candidates away and gave them to other people with the Bernie and Biden stuff. If the Trumpkins they don't know that's happening, I mean, yeah, man, it's not going to be good either way.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's one thing that we all can agree on for sure. Is that no matter who ends up being the winner of this, the other half of the population is going to be extraordinarily, like, they are going to be very angry.
Yeah. No, I did definitely think we all can agree there.
Yeah, it's going to be one or the other. If Biden goes through and he wins, Trump supporters are going to think it was illegitimate. If Trump wins, Biden supporters are going to think that Trump stole the election. Either way, nobody's going to think it was a fair election, and that we can just all. Well, I guess we're going to have to deal with whoever. Nobody's going to think about it this time around.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I said, we're in a wild period in our country. Like I said, there's not really any historical analog to what's going on at the moment.
Sure.
Well, we got to remember this history, that's for sure. But thanks for coming on the show this week, Kevin. It was great. Thanks for your breakdown and stuff about the voter fraud. This topic I know you've put a lot of time in, so I do appreciate you coming on and sharing what you know and break it down for Dave and I, because open and honestly, I didn't put too much time into it because I'm waiting for the other side of it. And I knew that you were coming on to do this, so I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I hope I was able to clarify it a little bit from what little I am able to understand. Looking at a lot of this data, I'm not really a numbers person or any of that stuff, so some of it's hard to break down. But there's a lot of things that really just do not seem right. That, like, I feel like they have to be investigated so these sort of things don't happen in the future.
Yeah, for sure, man. I agree wholeheartedly, and hopefully.
The one thing I think we also can all agree on: they should never do mass mail-in ballots again. That was a horrible idea.
Voting day should be voting day. That's all. We shouldn't have voting months or years. Or voting day is voting day. Get it done. Figure it out.
Why don't here's an idea.
100 years of this country.
Why don't we change it? Why don't we start elections on January 21st, the day after the president's inaugurated? That way, everyone can get a good, fair chance to participate. It's a solid 4 years of voting.
Oh, it's because I call.
Talk about low information voters, man, being able to sway elections.
No, and it's really sad too, just because, like I said, a lot of these liberals are going to be disappointed when there's more war, when a bunch of Wall Street people get pointed.
We're going back to the old normal, dude. Remember when Wall Street raped us of our retirements, endless wars, death by, white cops killing black people being locked up for low possession of drug crimes, murders and muggings, and back to the normal. Oh my God, we're back to normal.
No, nothing says that, I'm for liberals think like voting for global government run by banks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you mean all the global governments that had record high poverty until they were introduced to Western systems that pulled them out of poverty and gave people a lifestyle? It's a weird thing. Globalism is inevitable, apparently. I'm glad that we're allowing foreign dictators and presidents for life telling me how to feel in my own country. It's very nice. And I wanted to just tell you quick, maybe you can join Dave and I's movement. We started a movement. It's called Make Voting Hard Again. And we want more voting laws to make it more difficult to cast your ballot.
Every state you should have to show your ID. Why do you need your ID for cigarettes or beer? But if you're voting, which affects everybody, then no, you don't.
Well, there's no collusion when you vote. There's only collusion when you go and get alcohol and cigarettes.
So they say.
Yeah, make voting hard again. Needs to be resistance. But I guess we'll wrap it up with a beautiful bow here.
Yeah, no, I mean, a good show, everybody.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate everybody sticking around and watching. If you like the video, share the video. Become part of December Nation. Stay locked to the channel. Subscribe. Follow us on Parler now. Scoot. Facebook, YouTube. Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks, everybody. And, this has been a pretty cool show. We'll do the three-way again soon, guys.
Wait a minute. Was that your pee for this week?
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool show.
This has been a
Pretty cool show.
this has been a project by December 1773.
Ryan changes it every week. He's gonna run out of words eventually.
I've already run out of words, dude. It's not easy to come up with good P words that describe publication, presentation, perspective, product. Ooh,
I don't even remember what the original was anymore.
I don't know.
Presentation, I think.
Publication.
I thought it was presentation.
See, I don't even know.
I'm gonna fact check you. It's his thing. He doesn't even know.
I'm out of P words. Prediction. This has been a prediction by December 1773.
This kind of was a prediction.
Yes, in a way. But yeah, like I said, we'll just have to see what happens. Like supposedly a lot of federal lawsuits are supposed to get filed next week, so we'll have to see what happens day before, day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, for sure.
David, I have a name for this episode, I think.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, well, I just think I should explain it here. Since they released the Kraken this week, I think we should call this episode December in the Caribbean. You know? Like Pirates of the Caribbean?
We'll see about that.
I tried. I tried.
Well, I'll tell you what. If any big movement happens or any big changes happen, we'll definitely have Kevin back on to talk some more about this. I'd definitely be interested to have you back on. If this goes to the Supreme Court and this thing gets flipped up, Kevin's definitely getting back on for sure.
Yeah, and we're drinking on air. We'll be straight liquor.
Yeah, like I said, we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, there's really no way to know what it's going to go, though, just because we don't really have historical precedent for this.
Not a lot.
I guess we're making history then.
Hopefully.
All right, fellas.
All right, have a good night.
Yeah.
Peace, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.